Hello, join us as we go back to Venezuela, where two new back to the homeland airplanes are arriving at this moment in the country with 252 Venezuelan citizens who were kidnapped in Salvador's concentration camps. At this hour, we are live from the International Airport, Simón Bolívar Airport in Maiquetia, La Guaira State. Minister Diosdado Cabello is present in this welcoming that Venezuela is offering to these Venezuelan citizens. Also, there is Vice President Delcy Rodriguez present at this moment at the International Airport. We are seeing one of the Conviasa airplanes that just arrived in Venezuela. We are also seeing Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello, at this moment having some words with the Venezuelans on board of this airplane, boys who have been suffering the most brutal treatment in El Salvador concentration camps, all with the complicity of Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele. This is a day of victory for Venezuela. This is the result of many dialogues, of efforts, of also struggling, of people on the streets constantly, and also a moment of truth of what are the consequences that the government is able and is conscious to do to bring back to the country all of its connationals who are at this moment being subjected to a xenophobic campaign promoted by the US government of President Donald Trump, who has been targeting Venezuelan migrants and also have been forcing the separation of these migrants from their children. Currently, there are over 20 childs that are being kidnapped in migrants' jails in the United States, and this is a moment of true victory for Venezuelans because this is a major step in the efforts of the government of bringing back to the country all of those who are vulnerable to the decisions of the U.S. immigration authorities, of the U.S. president as well. We are seeing also Jorge Rodriguez, who has been key in the process of dialogue between the United States and the government of Venezuela, who have had no mediators, even though Venezuela has received the support of many international organizations, also has received the support of the Holy See. We have been seeing how even Pope Leo XIV has been speaking up for Venezuelan migrants. Those are boys, just boys who were treated as criminals without any evidence of it, many of them just for the mere reason of having tattoos, bearing the names of their parents. This is a moment of victory. We can see there are applause, there are joy at this moment. The Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace is at this moment having some words with these young Venezuelans who now are going to be able to reunite with their families, are going to receive all of the protocols that the Venezuelan government has been establishing for the arrival of these Venezuelan flights with Venezuelan migrants. This is over. There have been over 40 Venezuelan migrant airplanes. This is, of course, one of the most relevant achievements of the Venezuelan government, who has been trying and putting all its efforts on bringing back them safe and sound. There are 252 migrants just arriving at this moment in two airplanes that departed from El Salvador directly to Venezuelan soil. Let's recall that the journey of these migrants has been full of hardships. Initially, they were deported by the United States. They found themselves as victims once more, this time at the hands of the Bolivarian of the Salvadoran government. They were interned in the infamous Center for Containment of Terrorism, SECOT. Their plight drew international attention and condemnation. They were transferred them as criminals with no contact with their families, without due process, with no right to legal defense. There were no news regarding the whereabouts of these boys, who are simple boys. Also, the Venezuelan government, at the moment in which the news became known, the Venezuelan government stepped in, orchestrating a complex rescue operation that culminated in their safe return that we are now witnessing with our very own eyes. This event transcends the mere act of repatriation. It symbolizes hope. It symbolizes resilience against all odds. This was promised by President Nicolas Maduro, and now he's fulfilling his promise. Venezuela's government intervention also signals its commitment to protecting nationals, asserting sovereignty, challenging international migration asylum norms, also against all odds, without receiving any help from the United Nations Human Rights Office. With Volker Turk at the head, there were no pronunciations on this matter by this official. Also, President Nicolas Maduro administration has positioned this as a moral victory, highlighting the state's dedication to safeguarding its citizens regardless of geopolitical hurdles. And this is a proof of this. We are now witnessing the arrival of the first two members of this 252 group of migrants that are coming from El Salvador. We can see all of them have been going through the most brutal tortures. Some of them even have physical consequences. All of them are going to be taken for medical checks, and they are going to be handed over in person to all of their family members. We can see on the front line Executive Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez. We can see also Jorge Rodriguez, who have been key in this process of negotiations. Also, earlier today, President Nicolas Maduro informed and the Venezuelan government informed in an official statement that it authorized this humanitarian operation after months of diplomatic efforts led by also former Spanish President José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, who was also a key actor and also a key mediator in these negotiations between Caracas and Washington. We can see Minister Diosdado Cabello is offering statement, let's see, of the rat who is Nayib Bukele. With this, he said goodbye to the Venezuelan boys when they were going off the buses. When they arrived at the airplane, they shoot at them. Several boys are wounded with this rubber bullets. The world needs to know this. This negotiation was never agreed upon with that who rules in an illegal way El Salvador. The U.S. bosses and also Jorge Rodriguez spoke directly with the government of the U.S. They took advantage of our boys. Some of them come with rubber bullet wounds. He's a miserable man. This is madness and the losses of they lost the business of all the money they were going to be paid because of those involved. If there is any justice in the United Nations, an investigation should be opened, because we are going to put all of those boys to declare of the damage they suffer. It has no size. This barbarism of these men, they were handcuffed and they were shot at with rubber bullets. They had to face this. And they mentioned nothing until now, until the end, because the joy is bigger, because they are now at home. And now we are going to allow all the rest of the boys to come down the airplane. We were listening to statements of the Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello. He was referring that all of those boys were the government of El Salvador said goodbye to them by shooting at them with rubber bullets. Some of them have even physical wounds because of this aggression. None of them mentioned anything beforehand because they were too afraid, and also they were too happy because they knew that they were heading for their home. We can see now they are coming down the plane at this hour. There is so much joy. You can see them, all of them saluting the cameras. All of them know they are safe at this moment. This is the welcoming of boys, simple boys, who were unjustifiably taken to Salvadoran concentration camps. And how is El Salvador saying goodbye to them? By shooting at them with rubber bullets. There are some of them, as we mentioned, and as the minister mentioned, some of them have physical wounds following this aggression. Now the truth is going to come to the light, the minister said. All of these boys are going to be denunciating all of the mistreatments they were subjected to. Some of them can't believe that this is happening. Let's recall that these boys were kidnapped in concentration camps since very early in this year, and they were taken without any notification to their families, without even having the right to contact their families, lawyers, or without due process. This is a moment of victory for Venezuela, following the most brutal and the most atrocious violation of human rights committed so far by the U.S. government, in complicity, of course, of its ally, its complicit, Nayib Bukele from El Salvador, as the entire humanity knows that he is set to keep committing crimes of humanity inside El Salvador, and now it is exposed how it is willing to keep committing human rights violations, now with also citizens from all over the world, in this particular case on Venezuelans. And this is a moment of joy, of celebration. All of these boys are saluting the high officials of the country. Diosdado Cabello had personally some words with them. Now they know they are safe. Let's recall that earlier today there was an official statement from the government of Venezuela assuring that these boys were going to come back home after months of struggle, after months of people taken to the streets, after months of collecting signatures for the release, the rescued. The exchange, according to the official communique released from Miraflores Palace, Venezuela paid a high price to obtain the freedom of these nationals, but according to Minister Diosdado Cabello, all of the efforts were worth it, because now they are safe, now they are home. Let's recall that the journey of these migrants has been full of hardships. Initially, they were deported by the United States. They found themselves victims once more, this time at the hands of the Salvadoran government. They were interned in the infamous Center for Containment of Terrorism, SECOT. Their plight drew attention, and international attention, and also international condemnation. The Venezuelan government stepped in. They tried and orchestrated a complex rescue operation that culminated in their safe return. This event transcends the mere act of repatriation. It symbolizes hope, it symbolizes resilience against all odds. Venezuela's government intervention signals its commitment to protecting nationals, asserting sovereignty, and challenging international migration asylum norms. President Nicolas Maduro also addressed a few moments ago regarding this news and assured that this is a moral victory. This is a perfect day for Venezuelans, and how come not to celebrate the joy of these boys who are going to be reunited with their families, even with their boys and children who were forced to separate from their parents. And also there is much to be done, because there are still connationals in the United States being subjected to mistreatments and kidnapping. We're speaking about over 20 boys and girls, children, who are still waiting to be reunited, and the government of Venezuela is pushing forward for this recovery, for this moment in which they can reunite. These boys and girls who are kidnapped can be reunited with their families. Let's recall that the forced separation of children from their parents is a clear violation of human rights, is a clear violation of migration rights as well. To migrate is not a crime. imposing sanctions, to kidnap and also to torture migrants is actually. And this narrative is strategically amplified through state-controlled media, portraying. This is going to portray and show the world that the government of Venezuela is prioritizing its people. No one is left behind, and Venezuelans are even above external pressures, even in spite of the actions of the extreme right wing that are actually calling for the kidnapping of Venezuelans in order to put pressure on this Venezuelan society and also to put more sorrow, and with the sole objective of achieving a change in the political course of Venezuela, which is not going to be able to happen. It's not going to happen. We are seeing this moment as a true victory for Venezuela, as a true victory for Venezuelan families who are at this moment witnessing the arrival of 252 Venezuelan migrants who were kidnapped by the US government with the complicity of Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele, and also now it has become news the way in which they left El Salvador, which was with rubber bullets being shot at them, and some of them have even injuries of them. They were placed inside the airplanes with their hands cuffed, and even so they were being shot at by Salvadoran security forces. The government's action, the Bolivarian government's actions are framed as a defense against foreign interference, reinforcing a sense of national unity and also reinforcing our resilience in the face of the ongoing challenges, which are not a few. Let's recall that Venezuela has been subjected and targeted by US unilateral sanctions that tries to hamper the economic development of Venezuela, which is actually the main reason why Venezuelans go towards other nations and migrate in the first place, because of the sanctions imposed on the country. This boosts migration and now they are being not just victims of the economic sanctions imposed on the country, but now are also victims of the anti-immigration policies imposed by the US government of Donald Trump. And let's recall that this is a policy that has been even rejected by the people of the United States. For several weeks, we saw how the people, for example in Los Angeles, took to the streets to demand an end to the ICE treatment and mistreatment as well against migrants in the United States, and there were protests all over the country for several weeks that were answered with police brutality by the US government of Donald Trump, who, let's recall that for all of he made the massive deportation campaign a massive promise during his electoral campaign previous the elections of November 3rd of 2024. He has fulfilled his promise, and now it is being watched by the entire humanity with a deep sorrow, the way in which the whole humanity is watching how migrants have lost all of their rights inside the United States. And this is a clear violation of the migrants' human rights. They are being subject to mistreatments. They are being subject to forced separation from their children. And also they are now, with this 252 Venezuelan migrants, are the proof that migrants are also being subjected to forced disappearance, because there were no notifications to the families, to the government, of their whereabouts for several weeks. Families didn't know where their boys were, and now all of the truth will come to the light, as the Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello, assured. Now we are seeing the second airplane that has the other section of these 252 migrants arriving at this moment at the International Airport, Simón Bolívar International Airport in Maiquetia, La Guaira State. They are going to start to come down the airplane in any minute. And this is going to be also a moment of joy, of unity. Let's recall that for very early in the morning, there were thousands of Venezuelans on the streets demanding precisely the freedom, the liberation of these migrants who are boys, who are sons, who are fathers, and now they have their families awaiting for them in a moment who seemed surreal, even though the people trusted their government in their effort that they were going to bring them back, and now they are home. Let's recall that these government's actions are framed as a defense against foreign interference, reinforcing a sense of national unity and resilience in the face of ongoing challenges. Simultaneously, critics argue that these actions are also proving the real face of the U.S. government in its effort of cleansing the United States of their migrant community, their Latino working force. These are not criminals. These are working people. These are people who went to the United States because of the hardships that causes the constant imposition of unilateral sanctions on their countries, and not just Venezuelans, but also there are many nationalities, many people inside the U.S. that are suffering the same mistreatments, but the United States has had a special force against and has seen Venezuelan migrants as a special target. Let's recall that these boys were blamed to be part of a criminal gang that doesn't even exist anymore because of the work of the Venezuelan authorities to extinct them, which is the Tren de Aragua. None of them are part of this alleged criminal gang. All of them are boys, fathers, sons that were working in the United States. And also, the Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace, José mentioned that if any of them have any active criminal charge inside Venezuelan soil, they are going to be facing the justice. And this is a moment we're seeing at this moment. Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace, also Jorge Rodriguez, who is also the President of the National Assembly, and also the Executive Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, is also at this moment inside the airplane. They are having some words with these Venezuelan migrants, these boys that are going to be reuniting with their families. Diosdado Cabello is offering a welcoming return to the country. Those who are arriving at this moment are going to pursue some pre-established protocols, including medical revision to make sure that they are on excellent physical conditions, and those who have physical consequences of the tortures they went through, they are of course being taken to hospitals for their full examination. This is a moment in which the high officials of the country are welcoming these young boys. And let's recall that also President Nicolas Maduro is very attentive with everything that is happening. He was live a few moments ago speaking about this excellent news for the Venezuelan people, and how this is the result of many weeks of struggle, but not in an isolated way. It was not just the government the one that was making this great effort to bring them back safe and sound. Also the people, thousands of people went to the street for the past few months demanding the release, demanding the safe return of these 252 Venezuelan boys who are, most of them are very young, and they have been demanding, they have been collecting signatures, there have been concerts in favor as well of their safe return to the country. And this is a moment of vindication of Venezuela. It is a moment of moral victory for the Venezuelan people, not just the government. This is not an achievement of the government. Let's listen to Minister Diosdado Cabello. There are some protocols in matters of security, and also as part of the social attentions to integrate these men been given by the government of Venezuela once they arrive at the international airport of Maiquetia Simón Bolívar. Let's recall that they go through the migratory tunnel. They are being given all the process of attention in the migratory part, and then they are also going through medical checks and also legal support. And this is what the Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace said to these boys. They are going to be performing some protocol actions. They are going to be taken to medical examinations. Many of them, or some of them, have physical consequences of the tortures they went through in these months of kidnapping and forced disappearance as well. Now they are starting to come down the plane. We can see that the Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace, as well as Jorge Rodriguez, President of the National Assembly, also Executive Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, is there to welcome these young boys. All of the authorities are putting up all of the efforts possible to make this reunification with their families as smooth as possible, and they are going to be getting to hug their families in no time, following a series of actions, of procedural actions, like going through the migratory tunnel, as well as answering some questions from migratory authorities, and at last also going through medical checks to make sure that they are in good health, and those who have physical reactions and physical consequences, also they are going to be taken to hospitals. But all of this being accompanied by their families at last. This has been a moment very long for weeks and months by the Venezuelan people, by the Venezuelan families who have been on the streets for several weeks, demanding the release, demanding this moment to come, and now it is not a dream but a reality. All of these boys are going to start going down the plane, going down the stairs of the airplane. We can see how they have been welcomed by the high officials of the country, and we can also see that there were 2 airplanes arriving today with the 252 Venezuelan migrants at this moment. Also, this shows that the government has focused in coming and bringing back them, all of them, not just these 252 men, but all of the connationals that need to be saved from the migratory actions performed by the U.S. in its campaign, its massive campaign against migrants that has had a special emphasis on Venezuelan migrants, blaming them to be criminals, not according to the Venezuelan people who have been taken to the streets under the same slogan: to migrate is not a crime, imposing sanctions, kidnapping, torturing, it is. Let's recall that earlier today, the Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace, after having some words with these Venezuelan citizens, they said that they were deported and they departed from El Salvador following some gunshots. The rubber bullets were shot at them. This is a clear violation of their human rights, and it is a humiliation they tried to impose. Now we are seeing the first boys to come down the airplane of the second group of migrants that are arriving at this moment in Venezuela, in Venezuelan soil, and migrants often face treacherous conditions. They mostly navigate perilous routes in search of better lives, and in this case, they have been trying to overcome, to help their families from a country that doesn't want them anymore, even though migrants form a great space in the US society because of their hard work. And now they have been subjected to mistreatments for the sole reason of being a migrant, which is not a crime. We see now Minister Diosdado Cabello is receiving all of those boys, is saluting one by one. All of them, we can see the joy in their faces. We can see how they are saluting cameramen and also the ministers, the high officials. The return marks not only an end to their suffering, but also serves as a poignant reminder of the broader struggles faced by migrant communities globally, with also total impunity, because this is a criminal action. What they have been going on and what they have been going through, it is a criminal action performed with total impunity by the US government and the Salvadoran government of Nayib Bukele as well. Let's recall that earlier today, the government of Venezuela released an official statement assuring that this was going to take place, that this actually was a reality already, and the Bolivarian government attributed that the situation of these Venezuelans in Salvadoran territory was the most extremist, was favored and was asked by the most extremist sectors of the Venezuelan right wing within the framework of the migratory flows that have led several citizens to leave the country in recent years, mostly because of the economic hardships imposed by the over 1,000 unilateral coercive sanctions imposed by the United States. Let's recall that Venezuelan authorities characterized the detention of these migrants as kidnapping and also as a forced disappearance, denouncing the serious human rights violations in the SECOT, a facility built by the government of Nayib Bukele to combat gangs. But these Venezuelans have been targeted and labeled as criminals, but they are not. They are young men who were workers as well, who were fathers, who were sons as well. All of them very young, as we can see. And Minister Diosdado Cabello is shaking hands one by one. This shows the willingness of the Bolivarian government of caring, of guaranteeing the return and their insertion in the society. There is going to be a few protocolar actions that are going to be taken in order for them to reinsert in the society, and now they are going to have a better future, especially a dignified one, because they were subjected to so many mistreatments. Let's recall that the decision of bringing back to the homeland was because Venezuela is willing to leave no one behind. And this is also a moment that proves that Venezuela is going to do everything it can and is going to ask for all the help that it needs to be asked for every Venezuelan migrant to be able to return to their country in a safe and in a dignified manner. And this is thanks to the Back to the Homeland plan pre-established by President Nicolas Maduro in 2018, with the purpose precisely of rescuing migrants free of cost from any situation they could be facing in anywhere in the world. Let's recall that, let's talk about a little more of the situation that this young man went through during their incarceration and their forced disappearance. The journey of these migrants has been full of hardships. Initially, they were deported by the United States. They found themselves victims, this time at the hands of the Salvadoran government. This event transcends the mere act of repatriation. This, what we are seeing at this moment, what teleSUR English is bringing you to your screens, symbolizes the hope and the resilience of the Venezuelan people, and this is proved against all odds. even when it was very complex, a very complex process of dialogue and also of peaceful talks. We can see that some of them are coming even in wheelchairs because of the actions, the torture they went through. And some of them, like this young man we are seeing on our screens, have had physical consequences. There is another one in wheelchair we can see. This is the result of a criminal and brutal mistreatment, that they went through in these concentration camps in El Salvador. We can see now the Minister Diosdado Cabello is set to offer some statements. All of the young boys have left already the airplane. There were 2 airplanes arriving today with 252 Venezuelan citizens, human beings who were subjected to the most brutal actions performed by the U.S. migratory security authorities. Now let's listen to Jorge, to Minister Diosdado Cabello. At this moment is offering statement. Let's listen. Well, Venezuela, from here, from the airport, finishing the welcoming, the last of the 252 Venezuelans kidnapped by miserable Nayib Bukele, by criminal Nayib Bukele of El Salvador. They were freed. Look, those men came with wounds. All of them were beaten on a daily basis. They shot at them with rubber bullets. They have marks all over their body. The food was a disaster. Only once a day they received a meal. What was the intention? To harm Venezuelans. Well, they achieved that. But also they managed to unite the Venezuelan people and also reinforce the decision of President Maduro when he made a compromise, even at the high price that we had to pay. Could be high, but it's a group of Venezuelans that even they say this, they were threatened with 20 and 30 years of prison. Under what criteria? These boys are 18, 20, 24. I think that the oldest of them has 36 years old. All of them are young men. Nayib Bukele, in a desperate attempt to sabotage the direct negotiations between the government of Venezuela and the U.S., this plane he decided to put trucks in front of the airplane. They didn't want to this second airplane to head for Venezuela because he was receiving money because of these migrants, and he said goodbye to these boys with rubber bullets, and he had to speak with the masters, with the negotiators of the U.S. to force him to let this airplane to depart to Venezuela. And even though he's there saying that thanks to him, no, in spite of him, he was not taken into account. It was a direct negotiation, and the U.S. said, you need to hand over the people you have there. And Bukele tried to halt this airplane to depart for Venezuela, but we have reasons to smile. Today we received 7 boys, 5 boys and 2 girls. Also, over 200 Venezuelans arrived, and now we are going to keep working to recover all of the Venezuelans, and even more those who are being subjected to persecution and torture in the United States. They need to. This could mean that they are regretting this reunite. If there is any question. Minister, good evening. Could you precise, please, because the statement, it was reiterated by the authorities. you have paid a high price. Could you please precise the number of Venezuelans who were also given the decision, the legal well, this has nothing to do. It is a gesture administration of former President Rodriguez Zapatero. This has nothing to do in this account. Venezuelans did not negotiate it with the United States. Venezuela, it was a sovereign decision of Venezuela, and the President Rodriguez Zapatero has been since the very first day working and making contacts, and it was thanks to Rodriguez Zapatero actions, and they decided to hand over 10 terrorists, 10 mercenaries. Even they took a killer condemned to 30 years in prison because he was a U.S. agent. We handed over mercenaries, a former naval army as well that had actions in Central America and Iran, and also handed over agents infiltrated in Venezuela, and we gave them in exchange of these Venezuelans. And for Venezuelans, we handed over 80, but it is a decision, a sovereign decision of the President, thanks to the President, also with the actions of Zapatero. That's the truth. Minister, there could be legal actions against El Salvador. What actions could be made for, in some way, safeguard the human rights of these people who are returning at the country? And to know if you mentioned that there were over 252 Venezuelans. Is that ratified? Are there any Venezuelans in El Salvador already? Well, in the face of these circumstances, of a void of legality, you don't know where to go. We have been denouncing in the face of all the international bodies who have done nothing. We have even created a committee of family members evidencing what this criminal was doing to Venezuelan people. And they decided, when they sent 252 Venezuelans, they said they were going to send others, but that didn't happen. And I asked, and they said that there were only 252. They said also that there were women, but they handed over back to. And it was irrational to send someone to a country where they didn't commit any crime there. There are 7 with grave felonies of 252 people. Only 7 have criminal charges. All that rhetoric and narrative to speak about them of being criminals, they are young men. Is it a crime to be a Venezuelan citizen? Is it a crime to have to be willing to work? They were satanized, they were humiliated in front of the world. Now they are at peace in Venezuela. And those who have troubles with justice will have to go and face justice. And now as soon as they went inside the airplane, we said this, because their situation from being kidnapped without committing crimes is very different if you actually committed any crime. And those who are under charges of criminal actions in Venezuela will face justice. During the negotiations with the United States, did you receive any guarantee that no more Venezuelans were going to be sent to El Salvador? It is impossible. It is complex. It is complex. When someone says something and does the contrary, they shouldn't have sent not even one to El Salvador, and they sent 252. They shouldn't be persecuting Venezuelans, but they do. And they should not be demonizing Venezuelans, but they do. And we cannot believe in any words in the middle of these negotiations. We acted in consequence of what they asked for, and we received in return 252. They criminalized them, but only 7 of 252 had criminal charges. Minister, we want to know how many wounded did you count with the denunciation you made, and when can we know who are the 80 opposition leaders who who receive charges. Some of them have been mentioning these criminal actions when with those who have been sitting under the initiative of Rodrigo Zapatero, who has been always attentive of the peace and tranquility of Venezuela in the democratic process. In a statement, we thanked Zapatero, but what you mentioned of who they are coming out to the light now. No, I don't have the list. William Davila came out, as I remember, but I can't remember any other, because Davila, I know who he is, but the rest of them, I don't know their names. And that has to do with a negotiation that we have been doing. They know none of them that are coming out are babies, and they know of what they were charged with. It is a measure to seek peace and tranquility. President Nicolas Maduro said that this is not the first time it happens, not even now, not even a few years ago. This revolution, he two times amnesty to Leopoldo López. The wounded, well, there are young men. In the first batch, there were like 20 boys with wounds, and then 30 of them in the second group. If you can see their backs, they have marks all over. For example, when you're very young to know what peinilla is, but it's like a table. They were hit with a table. They had one of them have an infection in a leg, a boy from La Sabana, an infection that is even close to lose a leg because he never received treatment. It is not like they weren't treated, they were mistreated as well. They weren't treated as human beings, they were treated as beasts, disregarding the human condition. Now we are at peace, and in the course of tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, they are going to be reunited with their families, and they went from hell to the homeland. Great night for everyone. We want to thank the return of 252, thanks to God and the effort of our country. In the case of the children, what's the next step? Today we received 7 boys and girls. When are coming the other 25? I want to take advantage of this position. President Nicolas Maduro thanked Donald Trump because it was a direct negotiation. And I also want, and I'm very sure that they are thankful for us because we took a big weight from their shoulders. It was a negotiation. But beyond that, of what you mean about the boys, many of them were in fear. They were most of those who have returned were afraid to mention that their children were left behind. But now, little by little, they are even denunciating that their boys and girls are there. And we have 32, and now we received and we saved 7. Now we have still 25 more left, and we hope that this list doesn't grow any longer. The United States is saying that the boys are not a problem of exchange, but a humanitarian path, and we are asking them to return these children to us. They shouldn't be forced separated from their parents, and in that case you need to return all of those children you have kidnapped in the U.S. to Venezuela. This is like a string. We will have to see what it happens. Those were the statements of the Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello, during the welcoming of these 2 airplanes with 252 Venezuelan migrants. And this is a moment in which the whole nation and also the whole world has been seen as a day of victory, a moral victory for Venezuela. We were seeing statements of Minister Diosdado Cabello. He he said that many of these young boys who have returned to the country has even marks on their bodies of the torture they were subjected to. This is a moment precisely of hope. There are many reasons to smile, as the minister said, and this is a moral victory for Venezuela. 252 Venezuelan citizens are already in their homeland. This is all for the moment, but stay tuned with teleSUR English for all the information on this paramount event.
Many displaced families to flee again in the endless cycle of unemployment, and for those who try to return.